I absolutely love that song so much. I love that intro. It just does it for me. So I am ready to get started. So welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina, y'all. In just a second, we're going to be sharing the tea on, you ready for this? We're going to be sharing the tea on how to engage your board in fundraising because our live stream interviewee that was scheduled for today, Dr. Carrie Birchill, she had a family emergency. So we're going to allow her to deal with that. We're living within our values and family comes first. So don't worry. The power of presence, how leaders influence one-on-one conversations through space, movement, and intentionality will be rescheduled. No problem. This is something that I know that we need. And so I just wanted to let you know that. But let's get this started because if you've never met me before, again, I'm Sabrina, the Dream Team Architect, President and CEO of Building Better Boards. I specialize in building elite leadership teams for corporate and nonprofit boards and CEOs, turning high potential into extraordinary performance, y'all. And if you're looking to transform your board or need support working with your board or team, you've come to the right place. Again, I am Sabrina, a board development and governance consulting coach and facilitator who works with both corporate and nonprofit boards. I'm an international keynote speaker and your go-to expert for strategic leadership and governance excellence. I've helped raise over $36 million by in revenue while building organizational resilience. And I'm here to share the insights and strategies that can make a real difference for you and your organization. So we are going to get started here. I'm doing some multiple duties. So if you kind of see me looking off to the side, it's okay. Let's get started. And again, I just want to remind you, if you joined thinking you were going to hear from Dr. Carrie Birchill, let me share again that conversation has been rescheduled. The family emergency, we live in our values. She has to take care of family first. And her conversation, the power of presence, how leaders influence one-on-one conversations through space, movement, and intentionality will be rescheduled. And with that in mind, I thought I am going to go through all of my questions and I am going to find and answer the question that always comes to me, my biggest board questions. That's what we're going to spend the time going over. Now, y'all know I like boards, so it's about to get really exciting in here. And it's just what I do. I love it. So, question one. So, what's the biggest mistake nonprofit leaders make when trying to get their boards involved in fundraising? Whew. Here's the biggest mistake that we make, because I consider myself a we, sat in that seat for 20 years. Really, it's about around fundraising success is around clarity. We have to have clarity, we have to have connection, and we have to have confidence. I love a good iteration, y'all. So when we talk about clarity, it is you need to understand the fundraising process, right? We tend to think that fundraising is all about asking for money, and it's not. That is only 5% of fundraising. I call it the fear of the five because when we immediately go into fundraising, we think about asking. It's only 5%. So we need to understand that your board members bring different strengths to the table in that fundraising process, and you need to make the connection on what their strength is while you're making connections with them and building those relationships. So let's look at the fundraising process. So 10% of fundraising is identifying. That means you're identifying potential donors. That could be, something I do is when I go to different events, I collect the program book and I look and see who the sponsors were. I look at the logos. I look and see the list. It could be doing a list generator exercise. I do have that in my free VIP library. If you're not signed up for my VIP library, I don't know what you're waiting for. There's thousands of documents in there that you can absolutely get for free that most people charge for. But anyway, once you sign up, and there you'll see this list generator exercise. And so this list generator exercise says, name 2 people that you know you do business with. Name 2 people that you know you go to church with. Name 2 people that you know are in the school district. Name 2 people that you know are elected officials. So it's a series of name 2 people. It don't say anything about name people you know they got money. It don't say anything about name people. None of that. Just name those 2 people. Once you have those 2 people laid out, this is identifying, which is 10%. The next move is qualifying, right? So once you have them identified, you need to qualify them. So just because you know them doesn't mean they're going to give to the organization, or just because they gave to another event does not mean they're going to give to you. So you have to qualify them. And qualify simply means, do they have a passion for your mission? And do they have the ability to give? That's it. Missions are different. Some people are really going to, gravitate towards youth mission. Some are going to gravitate towards animal missions. Some are going to gravitate towards veteran missions. And I say all those examples because, look, I love kids. I spent 20 years in Boys and Girls Club, so I like kids. I'm a vet. I'm a United States Army veteran. My husband spent 30 years in the Army. I adopted 2 of my 3 animals from the shelter. I also support women's spouse abuse shelters. I support Girl Scouts, although I did get kicked out when I was little because I ate the cookies and then my mama had to buy them, and they said, I maybe didn't have the qualities for that. I digress. I support the Girl Scouts. So there's a lot of things that I do support, but there are some that when they come to me in the right way that I will give more towards, because again, I'm qualified. They have qualified me and they know how to speak to me. I tend to give more to youth development organizations than I do to a vet organization or animal organization or any of those. And so I have been qualified. So when 10% is identifying and 10% is qualifying for your board member, we call that door opener. That will be their role. They will be a door opener. That means they will introduce you to anyone in their circle, right? So some of your board members in that fundraising process will be door openers. And as a door opener, not only will they introduce you to anyone in their circle that is qualified, that they think is qualified, they will also build that relationship with them, keep them abreast of what is happening in the organization. They will help you understand that potential donor. Where do they eat breakfast? What makes them tick? They're really digging into that as a door opener. So that's 20%. 10 qualifying, 10 identifying. Board member role would be a door opener. The next 60% of fundraising, 60, you heard me right, is cultivation. That is building the relationship. 60% of fundraising is building the relationship. How do you build the relationship? There's a top 6 ways to build relationships. That's face-to-face visits, on the phone, print and newsletter, that type of communication, social media, that communication piece, volunteering, getting them to have a hands-on experience with the organization, inviting them in for a tour, things like that. Getting them to events, and I'm not talking about fundraising events. I'm talking about like house party events, whether it's intimate gatherings, and then asking for advice. Those are the top 6 ways to cultivate. The board members who are good at that area And I hope you have a lot of them, because out of a board of about 21, my board ranged between 17 and 21, fluctuated. Most of them was cultivators. And I loved it when I stopped beating my head and judging them for not being askers and leaned into their strength. Most of them was cultivators. And so as that piece, that building relationship, that 60%, those board members are cultivators. That's what they do. They build those relationships. And then 5% of fundraising is asking for money. 5%. I only had 3 board members who were not afraid of the 5. I call it the fear of the 5. And so that meant, as the CEO, I had to put on my big girl pants and say, will you consider an investment of $10,000 or of $1,000? Whatever that number was, and I was confident about that number, was because my cultivators had built relationships. They knew exactly what the capacity was. They knew what programs resonated with them. They understood that person. They set up the meeting. We went. They sat with me together. They did the small talk. They had built their relationship. And when it came time to make the ask, it was me who did that. And I was okay with that. I understood the process. And then 15%, that last 15% of fundraising is stewardship, or what we like to say, thank you. You got to thank the people. That is maintaining the relationship. Some of your board members are going to be great thankers. And I know that we think, oh my God, they're door openers. They're saying thank you. Nobody's asking. This is not going to work. Trust me, after doing this for over 20 years in the third poorest county in the United States, this works. You got to have clarity for your board and what role they fall in. You need to make sure that they're developing those connections with the donors, and not only with the donor, with the fundraising process. And you have to have the confidence. You need to have the confidence to be able to share this fundraising process with your board and implement it. I will never forget that someone said, Patrick, shout out, Boys and Girls Club of North Alabama, I said, I was complaining about my board, and I was saying, my board won't let me do this, and my board won't let me do that. And finally he said, girl, he didn't say girl, I said girl in my head. He said, what do you mean your board won't let you? He was like, you the boss, stay waiting on you. So I had to take that to heart. And once he said that, I said, okay, no more excuses. We got to figure this out. Clarity, connection, and confidence. So with that in mind, how can you as a nonprofit CEO build trust and relationships with your board members outside of the boardroom? A lot of this, again, is connection. And so you have to build those connections with your board members in order to make that fundraising process work. This is about moving from transaction to transformation. And so with that in mind, I'm just going to tell you straight up, you got a board chair. You should be meeting monthly with your board chair outside of the boardroom. You should be sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. You should be talking about the strategies. This is a relationship. Now, everybody got to eat. So set up a standing monthly meeting outside of the boardroom, right? And if that doesn't work, set up a standing Zoom. With this advent of Zoom, it works. Set that up. I like face-to-face. Zoom is face-to-face, but I want to reach across and touch, especially if you're in the same neighborhood or community. The other thing that you need to do is to build those connections. Is for us, what we decided is we, as a collective, as an executive committee, we were going to come together to put together the board agenda. So at least once a month, I walked in with a draft agenda. The executive committee was present. We went over it. We added things based on what the board wanted. We assigned who was going to be speaking about it because I was tired of speaking at the board meetings. That's not my job. It's my job, but it's not my job, right? It's the board. It's the board's. It's called a board meeting. So if it's a board meeting, then the board should be running the meeting, not the CEO. So we structured that, but that required meeting outside the boardroom. I had a lot of one-on-ones with my board champions. Now, board champions were people who had my back when things were going to go down, or they were people who the board really admired. And if I needed something introduced that they maybe normally were not used to doing, then it was my board champion who did that introduction. So, for example, sorry, guys. So, for example, when I inherited my board after someone who had been there for 30 years, I'm give you that full picture. There was no board giving. There was time, there was some talent, but there was no treasure. And so my board champion, after a series of lunches and talking and them going to trainings and hearing the message and me reinforcing the message, we introduced board giving to our organization. It was my board champion who had that conversation and presented the information to the board and why we need to do that. When it was time to launch a capital campaign, it was our board champion that said, we can do this. And this is how we can do this. This is why we need to do this. And we were strategic about it, partnering the champion. We had mission moments at the top of our agenda where we brought different youth in to speak about, what they liked about the organization, what they didn't like about the organization. And the building kept coming up over and over and over and over again. So that gave my board champion and myself the ammunition to be able to go in and say, hey, we got to make this happen. This has to happen. And so that would not have happened if you didn't build those relationships. And then, of course, there were other board members. Remember, board fluctuated between 7 and 21 at the highest, 17 and 21 at the highest. There were other board members that I would just, once a year, it was my goal to meet them outside of the boardroom. So I would get on my little circuit and I would just pop up into their office. My board members were local. I do work with some clients that their board members are everywhere. Some in California, some in New York, some in Connecticut. I understand that. Do a virtual pop-up. Be very intentional about scheduling a virtual pop-up or a phone call. You have to make and build these connections. So I would just pop up in their office and it would be like, hey, I'm in the neighborhood. I was just checking on and seeing how you're doing. Yeah, I want to see if you had any feedback for me. This is what we got going on. What are your thoughts? 5-10 minutes, just pop up. That's what I would do. And so I met very intentionally with each board member outside of the boardroom. And so this is what you have to do if you want your board members to actually be doing something to support fundraising, even if they hate asking for money. All of this was very strategic because as you're building those relationships and as you're making those connections with them, you're understanding again where their strengths are. Are they door openers? Are they connectors? Are they askers? Are they thankers? You're understanding that and you're gathering that information. As you are meeting with them, you're feeding them different ideas and seeing which ideas resonate. That is exactly how we started doing our house party, our friend raising, right? Our first friend raising event, I actually found out about House Party of Hope at a conference. And so I thought, oh, my board might resonate, because we had tried different things and it wasn't working. Remember, I told you I was one of those frustrated CEOs who kept saying, My board won't do nothing. They won't fundraise. And I said, well, maybe this is something that we can do. And I kept researching and figuring out this model, fundraising model. And I said, oh yeah, this will fit. This is that event that I've been looking for. And so we started doing those. And the first time that we did it, let me just be clear. The first time we did it, my board was very nervous. And so what we did was we did a practice one. So I had a board member, shout out to Beverly Land, who hosted our first fundraising event. And she hosted it in her home for our board members. So we did our first house party of hope for ourselves, for our team. And we went through it step by step. And it was a resounding success. They felt it. They understood it. They got it. And from there on, we had board members hosting house parties. That's what they did. Small, intimate gatherings. I will tell you, I'm going to just tell you, because we learned the best from other people's mistakes. When they say intimate gathering, it should be an intimate gathering. 10 to 12 people. That is success. That is okay. I always thought the bigger, the better. But intimate gatherings, what I found is intimate gatherings actually generate more revenue in the long term than those large gatherings. Because with the intimate gatherings, that's like 10 to 12 people that you got to follow up with. Whereas you try to do something big, it's like 40 people you're trying to follow up with. How many of them really are good leads? Even though they were invited to the board member's house and they know them personally, did they show up for the party? Because I had one board member who did a fish fry, and it was a wonderful party. And we went through the model, but with 40, 50 people there, how many people was really there for the organization, or were they there to get them some good old fried fish that Gary had not purchased? He went out and went fishing that day in the Gulf of Mexico. And got the fish, okay? And then he bought it back and he did a good fish fry for our house party. So small, intimate gatherings is the way to go. Do a practice one with your board, right? So I hope that is helping you. We got a couple more things I want to talk about. And one of that is, again, focusing on board and fundraising and their board fundraising responsibilities. The confidence piece. Remember, clarity, connection, confidence. The confidence piece is this. And I want you to say it with me. Nonprofit is a tax designation, not a business model. You need your board and you to think like owners and business people. They do not need to check their business hat at the door. And you need to stop saying, oh, we're just this nonprofit, and whatever you can do to help us, that will be great. We are so appreciative. You have to shift your mindset, and they have to shift their mindset. They're like owners, not volunteers. They cannot check their business hat at the door. The same business acumen that they exercise outside of the nonprofit boardroom, they need to bring it into the nonprofit boardroom. Again, because nonprofit is just a tax designation, not a business model. And I know that's a hard shift for some of you, but you have to make that mindset shift. And in order for you to make that mindset shift, you have to keep researching, keep looking. How do I make my organization grow? I am not telling you something that I have not done or experienced over my 30 years in this industry. Make the shift. And when you make that shift, bring your board along with you. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to build a dream team as a board. And if you can build that dream team that will help you with fundraising, that's the goal. You want your dream team, which is your board or your leadership team, and you as the CEO to work together to build that clarity, to build the purpose of the organization and the performance of the team. That's what it looks like when you have a dream team. You got clarity. We talked about that. There's purpose, there's performance, and performance is fundraising. They're performing. They are clear about their role. They know where they fit in. And the other thing around that clarity that oftentimes we overlook is, do they have a fundraising pathway? The more clear you can get with your dream team, the better it will be for you. So when I ask you, what is your board's fundraising goal? And you say, well, we don't really have one. That lets me know a lot right there. You ain't ready. When I ask you, well, what's your operating budget for the year? And you go, well, I don't know. I need to ask the bookkeeper, or, we really don't have a budget, or you're not on your way to building a dream. You're surviving and you're not thriving. And I want you to thrive over here. That's why I built this community. So you can have your dream team and you can thrive as a nonprofit who understands that nonprofit is a tax designation, not the business model. And because you understand that you have a budget, an operating budget. You understand that when when you're interviewing someone for your board, that they know that each board member is responsible for raising $3,000, and there is clarity around how they get to that $3,000. And it may look something like this. Each board member is responsible for raising $3,000, and a part of that $3,000 is $1,500 of that they have to give personal, and the other $1,500 is they find a sponsor for our event. Or it could be each board member is responsible for raising $500. As a part of that, $500 is their personal gift to the organization. And the other $1,500 is they have to sell a table for this event, sell a table or buy the table, sell a table or buy a table for the conference that we put on. So that's $500, $1,500, that's $3,500. And then they have to secure 2 auction items for the event. And whatever those auction items go for, that makes up the difference towards the $5,000. That's clarity. That's a complete thought. So you got to understand, in order to build a dream team, that implies you're putting together a championship team. And in order to put together a championship team, there's got to be some clarity involved. We don't go to the championships willy-nilly. We go to the championship because we practicing, we putting in the work, we got our budget, all those little things that make up championships. That's what you got to do. So you got to overcome this "my board won't fundraise" excuse. And we got to really talk about what is the real problem here. Is the real problem expectations? They're not clear on their expectations. Is the real problem training? You're not providing them with any training. And I'm not just talking about free training, coming to my webinar. Y'all listen to this podcast. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm going to be very clear with you. Trainings, paid trainings. My board went to conferences that the organization, yes, the organization paid for the conference. It was an investment. We did agree if the budget ended in the red, then they would reimburse for I think it was the hotel or the registration. And we did agree if they had frequent flyer miles, that they would use their frequent flyer miles to purchase the tickets so the organization wouldn't have to. But we believed in training. I do this year alone, 2 workshops. Be a better board member. $50. You're getting quality in-person training for $50 per board member. Why do I do that? Because I understand that training is important. And sometimes budget can be a barrier. So training, what's the real problem here? Or is it culture? Have you created this culture of, well, we're just a nonprofit and, we got to go out here and beg for everything that we have, and whatever spare change that we can get, that would be great. Is that the culture you created? Are you creating a culture of philanthropy where there's an abundance, where it's an honor to give to our organization because it's an investment in whatever that mission is, an investment in youth. We're offering you the opportunity to give where your values align. You got to get to the real problem. What is it? And in order to do that, again, you might have to invest. You got to do a board retreat or some workshops or some strategy sessions. This is what it takes to build a dream team. I'm sorry if nobody ever told you that. I'm sorry if you think, well, we started a nonprofit and we don't have to invest and everybody's going to give us everything because we are a nonprofit. That's not going to work. And so you got to figure out that my board won't fundraise excuse, expectation, training, culture. And I'm going to add, as I sit here and say, your mindset as the CEO plays a huge role in this. Because if you say, well, I did the expectation form, we signed that. I got the expectation form from your VIP library. We signed it, but they still don't do it. That's a mindset thing. That means that you can't just sign a form and expect things to happen. You got to put some milestones in place. What kind of culture are you creating? So yeah, with my board, they sign their expectation form, signed every year in December. Every year in December is a part of our annual meeting. We passed out their expectation form. They signed their expectation form. But every quarter, we talked about that expectation form. Every board meeting, there was in our board packet at the beginning, there was an attendance list. You had an A if you were absent, a P if you was present. Why? Because that was a part of our expectation that you would not miss 3 meetings in a row. It was their name with the A or the P. Very public accountability. We had a gamification scoring, red, yellow, green, that said if you were expected to raise $5,000 and $500 of that was your personal gift, it was on the paper if you made your personal gift. Now, we didn't talk about it every month, but it was there in black and white every month. We talked about it once a quarter. That's when the red, white, and green came in. If you in the red, you got some explaining to do. You got to catch up. If you were in the yellow, you were almost there. And if you were green, good for you. But we talked about those things. So you got to get it. You got to get it going. Figure out what the root of the problem is. A real problem. Have yourself a good conversation. Have a retreat. I do these retreats all the time. When we do these retreats, We walk out knowing if my board members are door openers, cultivators, askers, thankers, they know exactly what they're going to be doing. If they're door openers, they're going to share who they opening a door to. If they are cultivators, who they cultivating, how they cultivating, when they cultivate. We walk out with all of that. And if it's about in that retreat, if you never knew the pathway, the fundraising pathway, we walk out with that. And sometimes it's not a retreat. It's a strategy session. What we doing? How we doing this? So keep that in mind. And let me just say this. Out of all of that, I keep talking about expectation, training, culture, confidence. I'm going to tip back into confidence because I feel and I see that confidence sometimes is one of the biggest hurdles that you have to overcome. Because I've talked to some great nonprofit CEOs that I've done some strategic planning for, and we're sitting in those sessions, and they'll say something like, well, they're volunteers, so, I just try to do that myself. Or they'll say like, I don't want to ask the board to do that. And, I just want them to know that every penny they raise is being spent well. I've heard it all. That's all good and that's all great. But you are oftentimes devaluing what your board member can bring to the table simply by saying things like that and operating from that mindset. So I'm going to give you some examples from some people that I'm working with. Very, very successful nonprofit CEO. The girl is bad. Okay. She's raising multi-million dollars. She has grown her organization budget from like $2 million to now they're over like $5 million. The girl is bad. But she has this thing about the board. They're volunteers. I can't ask them to do that. So I'm like, so you willing to, run around like a chicken with your head cut off and be stressed out. So why do you have the board? What's their role? You're gonna keep growing this organization based on grants. You're gonna keep growing this organization based on events. What we doing here? Oh, you don't want to. They're volunteering their time, so you don't want to talk about we need 100% of board giving. Is that a you thing or a they thing? Because you're very willing to stay up late hours to write this grant. And you're very willing to be the face of the organization and to be at every event. You're very willing to do that, but you don't think that your board is going to be willing to invest their time, their talent, and their treasure. You have made that decision for them. Y'all need to stop doing that. 100% board giving should not be a controversial topic. It should be a topic of conversation. Now you have to be strategic about how you introduce that to your organization. Again, remember I had board champions. I educated them up and they're the ones who presented the information so that it was coming from a peer. But a lot of you just won't even bring up the conversation. You'll say, oh, they're volunteers. They're already given so much time. I can't ask them to do that. You can, and you should, because your board is the family to the organization, and they should be giving. And if that doesn't move you just because it's the right thing to do, There's a lot of foundations out here who will not give to your organization because you don't have 100% board giving, because they're looking at you like, why should I invest our dollars when the family or the organization is not even investing their dollars? It's a genuine question. Why? Why should I, as a donor, give my money to your organization, an individual donor, when your board member, who's the family to your organization, doesn't give? I'm going to sip my tea on that because that's good. These are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And maybe you don't want to address these things because of the mindset, because of the lack of confidence. And that's where a good board retreat will come in. When you have a board retreat, have a theme. What we're trying to get done today. What moves are we trying to make? What organizational change are we trying to ensure here? It's not just having a board retreat because, that's what they said we need to do. And we ain't got no direction, no theory. We just moving forward. No. I had another client, or potential client, let me just say, because she's not my client. Because if she was, she wouldn't be doing this. She goes to her board. If she has to spend $500 or anything, any amount of money, she takes it to the board. Why are you doing that? Well, I want my board to know that every penny that is raised, I am like honoring that. And I'm like, what you're doing is creating bottleneck. What you're doing is inviting your board to focus on things that they don't need to focus on. They need to focus on fundraising. They need to focus on trusteeship, making sure you got a strategic plan, making sure you have policies in place. They don't need to focus on whether you're spending $500 from your budget. Do you have a budget? Well, we never got around to it, but I know that we raise about this much every year. So that's really, what we base our budget on every year. That's what your board needs to be focused on. That's what you need to be focused on. Not whether or not you're spending $500. Well, we work so hard to raise that $500. Who is we? You mean you? Because I know, because of this confidence and this lack of clarity, I can almost guarantee you that your board is raising less than 1% of this, $200 and some $1,000 budget that you have. So is this about making your board feel comfortable and confident, or is this about making you feel comfortable and confident? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. Then finally, because I know I get to preach a lot on this, because I absolutely love this conversation. Y'all getting some good old coaching here. Some of you might not like me after this. It's okay. I am here to share the tea and to, get you going. I will say, if you've listened to this and you're still here and you still want to hear more and you ain't mad at me, if I was sitting in your seat and I wanted my board to start fundraising tomorrow, what would be the first step that I would recommend? So here's the thing. The first step that I would recommend is you got to look into some training for your board. And that training could look like board workshop. I get invited very often to board meetings, 20 minutes. They would give me 20 minutes of a board meeting agenda, and I'll go over board roles and responsibility. I'll go over board role in fundraising or board and staff partnership. That's within the board meeting. Sometimes I get a Saturday or a couple of hours and I'll do a virtual training, or in person if you happen to be local. If you don't mind paying for my flight, I'll come to you and we'll spend 2 hours exploring those topics. There's board retreats. I've said this over and over again. Training is important. There's also books. Look, I'm writing a book, y'all. I'm so excited about it. It's called How to Build a Seven-Figure Board of Directors, 7 Leadership and Fundraising Success Steps. Y'all going to get it. I know you will. When it's ready, I'll let you know. I'll probably be doing pre-orders real soon here. But anyway, I digress. Get a book that all your board members can read. Give them that as a part of their orientation. It will go over all the ways around recruitment, around fundraising, around this, around that. If you cannot afford training, going to conferences, any of that, you can afford a book. And you give them that book and you make a board meeting, 20 minutes of the board meeting, talking about a chapter you can get through. My book is particularly going to be 7 chapters. That's 7 board meetings. And you can have 20 minutes on each board agenda for each chapter and what you can learn from that. So you got to get creative if budget is an issue, because that's what I would focus on, starting the training of my board. That is my one recommendation to you. So I'm going to check really quick. I'm going to see if there's any questions. And if there is no questions, what I'm going to do, oh, Blanca has a question here. Yes, Blanca, I think I asked, can you ask a board member to bring a certain amount of money a year? Yes, that's where your fundraising pathway is. Like if it's $3,000 per board member, if it's $5,000 per board member, if it's whatever that number is, that is the number. And it is okay. That is where clarity comes in. And so, again, I'll give you the example. So I serve on Viva. Shout out to Viva. I see mommy's here. So mommy will tell you, sorry, guys, I went to North Carolina and got a cold for my dad. So mommy will tell you that each board member for Viva, we have to raise $3,000. Of that $3,000, $250 of that is our personal money, minimum, $250. And then we have to sell 2 tables for our Juneteenth gala, which if y'all want to buy a table, we selling them right now. Y'all can help me get to my goal. So you just go to villageinthevalley.org. You can get yourself a table. You know, help Sabrina and mommy out. So that's a very clear pathway. For the museum that I serve on, theirs is also $3,000, but theirs is a little bit different. For them, each board member has to join the Heritage Associate Program. And the Heritage Associate Program starts off at $1,500, $2,000, $5,000, and $10,000. And so if each board member has to bring in $3,000, and you also have to be a member of the Heritage Associate, so that tells me right there, $1,500 minimum out of the $3,000 is me. So that I know, okay, so I have to give $1,500. And the other $1,500 is that I have to sell a table or purchase the table for our event called Fandango, which is happening in October, y'all. So that's my clear pathway there. Now, do I go beyond that? Yes, I do, because we also have an annual board-led campaign. And as a part of that annual board-led campaign, we invite other people to join the Heritage Associate Program. And so that, yes, that is a great question. And that is how I would answer that. And mommy, I'm glad that you ain't mad. These conversations can be eye-opening for some. But if you want to know more about how to engage your board in fundraising, I just invite you to visit my website, at www.buildingbetterboards.com. Check out my services if you want a board retreat, if you want a workshop or anything like that. And if you're watching and rebroadcast of this, you can post your questions in the comment and I'll get back to you. I absolutely love talking about this topic. Not only do I love talking about this topic, I live and breathe this topic. I serve on 5 boards, y'all. You know the 2, Village in the Valley, Viva, and the Museum of South Texas History. Those are the 2 fundraising boards that I serve on. I won't serve on more than 2. And then the other 3 boards, I give out money. So I know what foundations are looking for because I serve on 2 foundation boards and I also serve on a corporate advisory board. So I know a little bit of which I speak. And so with that in mind, I truly hope that what I said to you today resonated with you. I hope that if you have any questions around boards or anything like that, reach out to me. I am okay with you reaching out to me. And I am so okay with answering any questions that you have because this is my jam, y'all. This is my jam. So with that, I'm going to say that's Sipping Tea with Sabrina. I don't know if you can see my mug. I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Magda. She made this for me. Her company is Osper Laser. Well, I don't know how to say it, but OSPERILASER. I'll put it in the comments, y'all. She made this for me. So thank you, Magda, for making this for me. I really appreciate it. And so with that, guys, bye, Blanca. Bye, Mommy. Thank y'all for joining. And anybody else that I missed here that's not commenting away, thank y'all so much for joining. And I will see you next time for Sipping Tea with Sabrina. Y'all be blessed. Bye-bye.